Hey guys, it is I, and I am here to tell you the story of a dream I just had. And I woke up not that long ago, so um, we're just going to tell the story before too much information is lost in, because that's what happens. But anyway, yeah, I was and am still sick, so this dream definitely did come from a weird place because you do get weird dreams when you're sick, or at least I do. So, at the beginning of this dream, I was at my old college town of Kutztown, which of course looked nothing like it does IRL, as it never does in my dreams. And I was there with three other guys. Apparently, I don't remember who they were, but apparently they were people I knew in real life. I remember that fact. And we were at this big festival. People were out on the streets selling things and displaying things and having beer. And we had a banner, and the banner was not my idea. It was one of the other guys' ideas, but it was made up of bits of my maps that were put together, like these maps. I don't know why, but one of my friends had the idea to make a entire banner out of them, and we were just sort of hanging out and just with our banner. But then a lot of the people at the festival started to get annoyed with us, and a couple cops walked over and said, "Oh, if you want to have a banner at this festival, you have to apply for a permit and wait 7 days and pay $100, and then you have to reapply every year or something like that." And it was just yeah, I want to do that. So then we just sort of left, walked away. What happened next was we were walking, and then things changed. It was no longer me and three friends. It was me and my parents and sister were walking. And for some reason, walking back from Kutztown to wherever we were going, probably home, somehow ended up us going through this area that was like the hoodiest of hoods. It might have actually been a city from a third world country that had been inexplicably plopped down in our path, and we were walking, and it was night. And I looked over, and I saw this black man loading a gun. And suddenly, for whatever reason, it occurred to me that this was the same guy who did the London attacks a few days ago, even though that man was Arab and he did not shoot. He just ran people over in a car. But in the dream, it was a black man. He had a gun. So we started running because we just heard gunshots, bang, 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 and we ran behind the building, and we got separated. My mom and I went one way, while my dad and sister went another way. We were, running and jumping over fences, going behind buildings, and as fast as we can. No, we didn't know where the killer was, but no matter where we ran, we could hear the gunshots. Eventually, by some luck, we all ended up at the same place, and we were all fine. But I almost forgot one important point. At one point, I turned to my mom, and I'm like, "Why did you lead us this way through this dangerous city? You knew that something was going to happen. You knew this was going to happen." And she seemed more angry at me for bringing up that point than she was angry that there was a guy chasing us and trying to kill us and everyone else he could find. But anyway, we all linked up, and we go to this big building on the side of a cliff that was apparently related to Peter Gabriel somehow. It was a museum of Peter Gabriel. And there was this ride in this museum that went from the top of the cliff down to the bottom, and we were like, well, that's our way to get away from the shooter. I think on our way there, we also passed back through Kutztown through this like giant industrial facility that doesn't actually exist IRL to get to this place on the cliff. But we go in this place and we go into this ride, which was like this spherical room, and this Peter Gabriel song I don't recognize starts playing, something from his later work. And the room starts to rotate downward so that like the window on the front became the window on the bottom. But the song that starts playing is not a Peter Gabriel song. It is actually a strange version of Billy Joel's We Didn't Start the Fire. And it became aware to me and to the rest of us that the hole in the bottom was actually a portal. And if you jumped through that portal at the right time when a certain song lyric was playing, you would be transported to the place that was relevant in the place that was being sung about at that moment. And, you know, I knew that there were some lyrics coming up that had to do with New York. And since New York is not that far away from eastern Pennsylvania, I figured that was the best time to try to jump. But I was very worried because if I mistimed it a second, there was apparently some lyrics about like something that happened way out in like the Pacific Islands or something, and I didn't want to accidentally jump at the wrong time. So I jump, and I go through the portal, and interestingly, instead of taking me to a different place in this dimension, it took me to a place in a different dimension. It might have even been a pocket dimension. It might have been even something fantastical, like Fantasia in The Never-Ending Story, or something like that. And so I end up being thrown into the ocean, not far from shore. No idea where I am. I try to swim to the shore, but the current is savage, and it's pulling me further and further out from where I want to go. So I remember what they say to do. Don't swim forward, swim sideways, and look for a current that's going the opposite way of the one that's dragging you out. So I swim sideways, but I end up getting pushed not back towards the land that I was trying to get to, but towards a different piece of land. And I heard this voice telling me to grab on, and I grabbed onto this piece of land, and I hoisted myself up onto it, and I was on this sort of weird construction, this weird area that looked kind of man-made, but also didn't look like it had any kind of purpose, like a very surreal kind of landform in this pocket dimension. And then I looked up to see this girl there. Now, she was probably more of a woman. She was probably around my age. But she was the most damnedest and interesting part of this whole dream. Now, she had hair, like, came down, you know, around her head like that. But here's the thing about her. Her hair was a fiery orangish red. Stood out. It was like dyed this way that just faded together, and it was like fire. But the rest of her was so pale that she was almost black and white. So she told me to come to her, or follow her to her house where it was safe. So I did, and it turned out that her house was a secret entrance into the ground that you got into by opening the lid of a giant cereal box. So she shows me where the lid is, and I open it, and I start to go into it, but halfway down I get stuck. I can't go down anymore. And I look up at her and I'm like, I think I'm stuck. And she's like, oh no, you're not stuck. This room is protected. You need to know the right words. But as she said that, it just let me through. It let me continue dropping, and I dropped into her house. And she followed me down into there. Her house was like her, so gray and so washed out that it almost looked black and white. I was in a L-shaped room, and it had a lived-in quality, but it wasn't messy or anything. It was small, and she comes down, and I forgot the key thing about this woman. She, even though she was speaking in a very pleasant voice, and she was smiling, and she was very warm, I could detect from her just the greatest weight of sadness in her. She was the saddest person I've ever encountered, and it weighed on her just like a mountain of sadness. I could just feel it coming off her. But she was very kind. We went into her house, and she started talking to me. I forget about what, but I noticed that sort of the diffuse light that was coming in from behind the curtain was not steady. Like, it would go up and down, kind of just in little stutters like that. Like the like whatever source of light was out there, or maybe the world itself, was just unsteady, and it was not existing at a level field. It was trying to exist, but it was having trouble doing so. So I'm at this house, and I also had a distinct impression this house had the ability to gain and lose rooms to the side depending on what was going on. Like, the main room was constant, but the side rooms appeared and disappeared. And there were people, I had learned from her that she was a person who took in people that didn't have anywhere to go and were lost, like I was. And I met this one other guy. He was like a black 14-year-old boy who had happened to find this place. And there was another person too. And I don't know for certain, but I think at this point in the dream, I might have no longer been my present self, but rather I had become like a 13, 14-year-old boy once again, whereas this woman was, probably early 30s. But at one point, this room appeared. That was his room. And I knew a room had appeared that was my room, too. And I think there was one other boy. We were all around the same age. And I think the other boy was either Hispanic or Asian or something. We were like all different races. But the damnedest part of it all was on the wall of the main room, not far from where my room was, there was a picture frame, a very tiny picture frame, only about 3 inches wide. And in that picture frame was an eye, was an illustration or a drawing, a very realistic drawing of an eye. And this eye was the girl's eye. But this eye was crying. And not only that, it was colored the same way that her hair was colored. That same fiery orange color with a little blue tear. And it was the only thing in the entire place that was not in grayscale. And that eye just seemed to radiate. It almost seemed to radiate its own light. It was the damnedest thing. And this girl and this eye just stuck in my mind. And it's still in my mind. I don't know what any of this means. But that was the damnedest dream I've had in a while. And that's it. So I'll see you guys later.